Inorganic minerals versus organic minerals. Is one form harmful to our bodies when we consume it, while the other is helpful? Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. It has been said that we are products of our environment, but I think it would be more accurate to say that we are products of our awareness of our environment. This is the importance of freedom of speech, sharing with one another what we have learned as individuals. And this is the reason behind censorship, blocking information shared between individuals. Censorship is a form of political suicide, an effort by the politician to take everyone else with him. This is a report concerning the information included in the book entitled The Shocking Truth About Water by Paul C. Bragg. The author's basic premise that inorganic minerals are harmful when consumed and that only organic minerals can benefit our body appears to be valid. Quote, "Just keep in mind always that you cannot assimilate inorganic minerals. You can only assimilate organic minerals which come from that which is living or has lived." End quote. What the author is saying is that you cannot eat dirt. Plants can get minerals from the soil, but animals cannot. He goes on to point out that inorganic minerals directly from the soil is harmful to animals. And this information appears to be something that many people are ignorant of, and others are taking advantage of that ignorance by selling products containing inorganic minerals and claiming that they'll be beneficial. The author points out that inorganic minerals in the drinking water is causing problems medically with people. Many corporations sell as vitamins inorganic compounds. I've heard it said that doctors tell people to eat off cast iron if they're low on iron. If the author is correct, that information is incorrect. In my studies of smoking, the books indicate that the smoker is trying to get niacin, nicotinic acid, from the oxidation of nicotine, and that recently, commercially, niacin is being produced from coal tar, which would be a switch from organically derived to inorganically derived niacin. And this is something being added to many foods, claiming to be beneficial. Yet if the author is correct, that would be false. Niacin, when consumed, prevents a disease known as pellagra, which is characterized by common acne, stomach disorders, and mental problems. Where's the vitamin D come from that they add to the milk? Is it organically derived or inorganically derived? Corporations appear to be cutting out the farmer and hiring instead the chemist that claims to be synthesizing these products in the laboratory.
To try to isolate the chemicals and synthesize them as closely as possible inside the laboratory. And I don't want to say we're halfway there, but we're certainly on the path. And there's nothing going to be as good as the original. That's true.
Do you think anyone's going to try and market it?
I think most of these situations, someone will try to exploit it for everything it's worth.
Again, the author points out that inorganic minerals taken into the body are harmful. They have an effect, but the effect is not good. He points out fluoride in the water is harmful. Salt from the ground is harmful. If the author is correct, much of the medicine is harmful, if not organically derived. This is for oral and injections into the body. This would be why many of the inoculations are causing problems with older people and children, especially. They're more vulnerable and would show the effects more readily. The shocking truth about water is about not being able to eat dirt, and that many of the corporations are trying to sell us dirt and tell us it is food, nourishment to our bodies, and it is not. In a government for the people and by the people, the enforcement of laws is done by the people, not for the people by corporate mercenaries. Don't get too big that you can't tell the truth anymore. Evidence indicates that from the big corporation, through its lobbyists, to our representatives, to our government employees, they're just in it for the money, or they're too ignorant to be in a position of authority over others. The Constitution was written to prevent such things from happening. Free speech must not be being valued or upheld. One educated person being heard sharing his views would have prevented this from occurring. We are largely products of our awareness of our environment, and our awareness of our environment has just made a big change. Search plus share. Magnutrition.
Another thing I should point out, and that is that the whole history of medicine has been an evolution away from the use of crude, natural products.
Think for yourself. Question authority. Throughout human history, as our species has faced the frightening, terrorizing fact that we do not know who we are or where we're going in this ocean of chaos, it has been the authorities, the political, the religious, the educational authorities who attempted to comfort us by giving us order, rules, regulations, forming in our minds their view of reality. To think for yourself, you must question authority and learn how to put yourself in a state of vulnerable, open-mindedness, chaotic, confused vulnerability to inform yourself. Think for yourself, question authority, think for yourself, question authority, think for yourself, question authority, think for yourself.
Not food they're selling as food. It's not representation of the people that they're selling as representation of the people. Educating the people is not as profitable monetarily as taking advantage of ignorant people. And censorship is what keeps people ignorant. Prevent it. Follow the First Amendment to a much better life.
We've all heard about snake oil salesmen. There's omega-3 in snake oil, and therefore, is it actually good for you?
Well, snake oil is exactly what it says. It is oil that is extracted from the viscera of snakes. Boil it up, and the oil kind of rises to the surface. In fact, this used to be done by a showman by the name of Clark Stanley, way back in the late 1800s. The snakes that he used didn't have any omega-3s, or at least very little. It turns out that it is only snakes that are found in very cold regions, like the cold water snake that I mentioned, the Arabus sea snake. And the reason that they contain the omega-3s is because omega-3s, as the temperature drops, do not solidify. And that's why fish, for example, cold water fish, also contain omega-3s, whereas the other kind of fats would solidify. Well, originally, it goes back to the ancient Chinese, and they used it as a liniment. And incidentally, Clark Stanley's product also was a liniment. You didn't consume it. The idea was that some of it would be absorbed through the skin. But the ancient Chinese used it as a rub in order to relieve the aches and pains of arthritis. And apparently it was brought to America by Chinese workers who had come to build the railroads. And when they suffered from aches and pains, they would rub themselves with the snake oil that they brought with them. And apparently this is where Clark Stanley got the idea, but not realizing that the Chinese had used a very different kind of snake. So perhaps the reason that the term snake oil got the reputation as being an ineffective remedy was because in those days in America it really was. It was an attempt to reproduce the Chinese remedy, but using the wrong kind of snake.